Good morning, I'm Shelly Sindland, and you're watching Beyond the Headlines. 2nd District Congressman Joe Courtney knows what it's like to be in a tough race, but with a revised $700 billion bailout plan once again on his plate, will Connecticut's new maverick be able to take the heat and vote against a bill that just a few days ago he called, quote, a blank check for Wall Street? Joining us now is Congressman Joe Courtney, who is joining us from the nation's capital, where you guys are eagerly and very busy at work. Congressman, let's just start with the first question. How are you holding up these days?
I'm fine. I mean, this is what you sign up for when you enter Congress, and certainly I knew 2 years ago that this country faced many challenges. There was a lot of, I think, harmful policies that have been the reason why I got elected, and I certainly knew that we have a lot of work cut out for us, which has been the case almost every week that I've been here. So, and frankly, there's more work to be done, and there will be even after this 110th Congress adjourns. So
you were the only one from the Connecticut delegation to vote against this. John Larson, Chris Shays, a Republican, mind you, Rosa DeLauro, Chris Murphy, all voted in favor of this bailout plan a few days ago when it first came across your plate. You did not. There is a new version now making its way back to the House after the Senate passed it. Where do you stand on this now, Congressman?
Well, again, first of all, I think the no vote on Monday resulted in a change at the Senate level that has made it a better bill. I mean, just simply raising the FDIC limits from $100,000 to $250,000, that's the insurance limits for depositors and banks, which the Senate bill changed, I think is a positive development. There's a lot of small businesses whose payroll exceeds $100,000 that now will have a lot more security in terms of their funds. The issue that I have focused on the most is an issue that's very relevant to Eastern Connecticut. As the Hartford Courant documented a few months ago, it's the hardest hit part of the state in terms of the subprime mortgage foreclosure trend that's been going on across the country, and frankly is the root cause of the financial mess that we're in right now. I mean, the assets that Paulson is proposing to use the $700 billion to buy are all bad assets because of the fact that bad lending and bad borrowing practices occurred over the last few years. And we see it in Eastern Connecticut at the end of the process. What I believe very passionately is that if we had a mechanism in this bill to slow the foreclosure rate, and again, it's accelerating right now, it's not decreasing, and if we don't have a mechanism to slow that down, then the assets that the taxpayers are being obligated to pay for under this rescue plan is doomed to either decline or stagnate. We've got to put a floor in it, and by making a common sense change to allow, on a temporary basis, bankruptcy courts to work out these loans and stop the slide of abandoned and vacant properties, which is driving down real estate prices, will make this a bill that I would feel much more comfortable supporting. The Senate did not adopt those changes. Right now, I'm actually in between caucuses. Some of us are still trying to see if we can make that very common sense modification that won't cost any more money to the plan, and in fact will, I think, protect the taxpayers better in terms of the value of the assets that the Paulson plan proposes to purchase.
You must be under tremendous pressure, though, from within your own party to vote for this, no?
There's no question that I think the leadership would prefer a yes vote than a no vote, but clearly the ownership of this legislation includes Secretary Paulson and also the Republican leadership in both House and Senate. So, my concern, frankly, the biggest pressure I'm most concerned about is, what's happening back home in terms of our economy. And there is no question that there is a real problem that Secretary Paulson has identified, and part of his plan will address it in terms of using these funds to basically soak up the toxic loans, as he calls it.
But
the problem is, though,
But a lot of people are still furious about this. And Mayor Giuliani was in Connecticut the other day. He didn't like to use the term bailout because he's in favor of this. He says bailout is creating somewhat of a class warfare. However, folks I have talked to still see this as a bailout, and they are furious by this. The Bush administration said a week and a half ago that essentially the world would end if this wasn't rushed through Congress. The world did not end. How do we really know that this bailout will stop what is going to happen. $700 billion is a lot of money.
Well, I think that's the absolute crux of the issue, is that something this big, it's the equivalent of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan combined, better work. And what I'm concerned about is that by not addressing the root cause of this bad paper that Mr. Paulson feels has got to be taken off the books to free up credit, that if we don't get to that root cause, that we're going to have a plan that is going to result in the next Secretary of the Treasury coming back to the American people and looking for more money. It's almost like filling up a tire that has a leak and not patching the leak. I mean, you're just basically borrowing time with what I think is the present design of the policy. Again, it's a very difficult situation for our country right now. There is tremendous concern about large employers in Connecticut about making sure they have access to short-term credit. So we're doing our best to try and balance, all the forces that are at work here. But again, I believe very strongly that there's a better way to design this plan so that all those concerns that you described very well, Shelly, are addressed.
Well, let's go to, I have an interesting thing I read actually on livescience.com, and it puts into perspective how much $700 billion is. It's something that, of course, I will never know in my lifetime. I'm sure you too as well, Congressman. But as you had mentioned, first of all, it makes NASA's budget look like petty cash. It is more than the cost of the war in Iraq for 5 years. It is more than the cost of Social Security for 1 year. It would take the net worth of most everybody on Forbes' 400 richest list to come up with this kind of money. Now, here's one for you. Each American, including children, would have to pay $1 a day for the next 6 years to pay off the debt. Congressman,
Yeah,
I mean,
really,
I know I'm kind of speaking to the, I'm the preacher speaking to the choir
right.
here because you voted against this, but these are the concerns. Will this bankrupt Social Security, for example, which is already in trouble?
No, it's a legitimate, it's the question. And the fact that Treasurer Paulson came to the Congress a couple weeks ago with a 3-page bill that basically said, give me this money and I'm not even subject to judicial oversight, was an insult to the taxpayer and to the Constitution. And certainly there's been some improvements by trying to create more oversight and giving the taxpayer some ownership interest in these assets, and so that there'll be some potential for recovery down the road. But at this point, I think the design of the plan needs to be improved, and that's what we're working on here tonight. And the one thing I want to emphasize to people is that after the vote on Monday, there was a lot of fear that nothing was going to happen, and that's why the stock market reacted so dramatically.
So, Congressman, we're almost out of time. We only have like 30 seconds left here. But
we're going to work this through. That's my only point.
Are you leaning more towards voting for the bill? And do you consider yourself a maverick?
Anyone who knows me would really kind of chuckle at that description of me. The fact is, I want to see this bill made better so that I can go home and tell people that I think it's a plan that's going to work, and we're not there yet.
Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Okay, Shelly.
All right. Yeah.